Now,
So
when this happened in Jesus' day, Jesus went to the cross because the Pharisees didn't like him. He was upsetting their power and control, and so they used the Romans to do the job for them because they didn't want to get their hands dirty. Is the Roman Catholic Church at this time just not wanting to get their hands dirty, or did they feel that separation was important for church and state reasons or
no, I mean,
whatever?
I think there so many of them were genuinely influenced from the teachings of Jesus in a positive way, and they, even though torture was sort of available to them, they weren't so sure that this was a good thing to do. Most people, but you're going to have bad apples and good apples in terms of people in power in the church everywhere.
I, I can see when you describe it that way, they're going out to various towns to try and educate the people all over the place as to what God really says or what the Bible actually says on these things. When I put myself in that situation, I could see, well, I love the truth. I love to pursue truth. And if I am a sincere follower of Christ, I'm especially interested in what Christ taught. And I would very much, I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm not, if I were in the culture of the day and I was in the church, I would probably think seriously about maybe helping out, going out from town to town. But at the same time, I would hope, I would hope that, like you're saying, there was good apples and bad apples. There were sincere teachers in amongst
Yeah,
those. But at the same
yeah,
time, there were people who would coerce and so forth, where I abhor the coercion part of it.
exactly.
But I love the teaching part of it. Now,
Yeah,
whether I could actually be part of that, knowing that if somebody doesn't comply with what the Jesus actually taught, then there is step two,
yeah.
and that's where I would think there would be a problem.
I'm 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 sorry that I was laughing while you were saying that. The reason I'm laughing is because I thought exactly the same thing, and I wasn't sure I was going to bring it up today. But you've just
I'll
in
confess, I mean, I guess it's helpful to know we tend to judge cultures in the past by what's fine today.
yeah,
But in reality, if we actually put ourselves in that culture of the day, we tend to be a little less pious. Like I see a lot of piety even amongst non-religious people today that, oh, if I was there, I would have never done this or that.
yeah.
But to be perfectly honest, if you love the truth and you love teaching, it'd be tempting to be part of helping people understand, what the teachings of Christ actually are.
Especially if there's fear involved. And I saw this during our recent pandemic, where people that were pro freedom before, as soon as it's like, oh, this might actually affect my ability to live, I need to make sure that everyone is doing exactly this in this way. And it was very much an inquisition. And if you weren't doing what you were told to do, you'd lose your job. You'd like death wasn't far off in people's minds. I was on Twitter at that time, and people would have been much more willing to throw people into the lion's den if they could, if it would stop the pandemic.
But I have to just chuckle at what Kirk said because I thought the very same thing. I thought, Kirk, you and I do the work of apologetics, right? We're teachers. We travel around and we're
Yeah.
motivated by a love of the truth and a desire to help people discover what we believe really is true and what we believe is really beneficial for
Yeah.
flourishing in this life and then eternal life with God. I mean, we're highly motivated to do that. And so, is there
But
not
that
some
being said,
similarities
Michael,
there?
that being said, I think you and I probably both agree is that, in fact, the question of rhetoric came up last week as I was preparing a talk on deception. Rhetoric is the ability or is the art of persuasion, either verbal or written. And the question is, how much rhetoric would I be tempted to use? Would it actually be a real decision to follow Christ if, in fact, I just persuaded somebody through rhetoric? Or that's one step down from force, but
Yeah.
that persuasion. So I think we both love the truth,
Yeah.
but we both recognize it has to be an internal acceptance of the truth to be real, so to speak. Otherwise, we're just deluding ourselves. And I think perhaps, any inquisition, they're just deluding themselves. And I wonder how much our society today is deluding themselves by forcing people to comply with what we call wokeism, or you'll lose your job, or you'll be punished, or whatever. So you see a lot of compliance on the surface, but underneath, I think we're seeing symptoms of problems.
Yeah. No, the comparison between the Inquisitions centuries ago and maybe what's happening today with so-called woke culture, you'd have to be blind to not notice the analogy, the comparisons.